It feels like we have another NHL trade deadline, this time in December, folks. So many trades have happened that we need to talk about. Big deals involving the New York Rangers, the Montreal Canadiens, and more. And today we're going to be talking about each one, dissecting it piece by piece. So make sure you watch till the end for all the trade news and all the trade analysis. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year. I was going to say up until the trade deadline this season, but it looks like it's already came. Now, today's video is presented by BetUS, friends of the channel. And if you guys are making a look picks for this hockey season, BetUS is the place to do so. Just use code YouTube150 when you're signing up, and you'll get an 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and 125% sign-up bonus on your next deposits after that. But if you're looking to make picks on every single NHL game, especially for your favorite team, the NHL draft, and even the Stanley Cup for this year, BetUS is the place to do so. And thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. But now let's get into the trade business here today, and let's start out with a trade that I have been waiting for a while now. Kaapo Kakko has finally been traded from the New York Rangers. Considering everything over the last week that we saw with Kakko getting healthy scratched, then following that, kind of blaming some of his teammates and saying they should have gotten healthy scratched instead, it seemed like Kakko was just on his way out from the Rangers, and honestly, it felt like this has been an inevitability over the last couple of years anyways. Kakko is somebody that I think was largely mishandled, especially in his early seasons with the Rangers, with David Quinn and everybody there. Sure, the hype here in his draft season was absolutely real. He was somebody that just did so well, whether it be in the Liga, whether it be the World Juniors, the World Championships, one of the better draft seasons we've seen out of any Finn over the last 10 years. But he's somebody that I think really could have used one more season to develop that speed, that strength, that confidence, and that's something that we never really saw Kakko develop in the NHL level. He's had some good points here and there, and his best season coming back in 2023, getting 40 points in 82 games, but he's somebody that has just largely stagnated, has still put up great defensive numbers, but has not been able to unlock that finishing ability that he had back in his draft year. The confidence that he had has just never quite been there. Back in 2019, we saw this play-driving, puck-protecting forward that could use his strength, use his confidence to go around anybody he wanted, but that type of game-breaking ability just wasn't found at the NHL level, and I think that's because of the lack of patience with him, the lack of consistency that we saw in his confidence around the team, a confidence around in coaching. He was flown all over the place in all different situations to try to make something stick, and it just never really seemed to work. Besides when the Rangers would try out that kid line with Lafreniere and Hedel, that's where Kakko, I think, looked his best, but still that offensive finishing ability was always a problem. But now we see him getting shipped to the Seattle Kraken, and I love this for him. Not only going to a team that I think has confidence in him finally to be something more than he has been, which I think is an important thing. I think for Seattle, they've done a really good job of developing some of their younger players already, and especially with how much Seattle craves those type of middle six, top six complementary wingers, Kakko is going to fit right at home there. Now, I do think for Seattle, I'm not sure with Kakko if how much shooting ability there's going to be in the future. I think that is just the main weakness that might stagnate Kakko's production in the future, and I'm not sure for Seattle if they're exactly the team that needs more playmaking, more lack of finishing. I think they could use more of a natural goal scorer, but still they have some players there like Tolvanen and McCann who can pop in goals when they need to, and Kakko could be kind of in that Tolvanen range where he was somebody that was given up pretty early coming from Finland, but somebody that really could have some offensive potential here. In Kakko's case, I still don't think you're going to get more than maybe a 60-point player in the future, but I think if he's able to hit those type of numbers while providing the two-way game he has and the smarts that he has around the ice, that's still an extremely valuable player that you want to have in your top six. I think a lot of people saying the Rangers gave up on him too early are quite frankly wrong, because I don't think Kakko was ever going to live up to his potential in the Big Apple. I just don't think that was going to happen with the organization there, with the roster around him. He just was put in a situation where it was never going to work. He was a left winger in his draft year, and of course you had Kreider and everybody there already on the team, which stagnated Kakko's development already. In Seattle, though, I think the opportunity is wide open. I think that's exactly what he needs. Even if Kakko still continues to stagnate a little bit, he's still a solid 40-point, 50-point guy in that middle six who can drive defensive results and really just push pace in the right direction. He's not going to be blowing you away with his speed or the skill at this point, but maybe the Kraken can unlock that in the future, and hopefully he's able to get that confidence that I think can really propel him in a different direction. Now let's talk about what the Rangers got back in this deal, because even though I think Kakko is the biggest positive piece, you still have a couple of picks, a 2025 third rounder and a 2025 sixth rounder, and defenseman Will Borgen going back. Now, I see a lot of people writing off Borgen this year, and especially this season. I will admit he has been pretty disastrous, putting up some really bad analytical numbers and not really looking all that inspired on the ice either. But I would say last season is where Borgen is hopefully at home when it comes to his actual results with the Rangers. You look at him, 28 years old, 6'3", 205-pound defenseman. I thought last year for Seattle, he was a really effective two-way defenseman for the Kraken. I mean, really the past couple of seasons, he's been an effective guy for Seattle with the physicality, with some of the perimeter play he has offensively. There is some offensive potential there. Nothing too crazy. I think he's probably going to settle around the 20, 25-point range. But you can see this year, the production really hasn't been there, 2 points in through 3 games, and the defensive play has taken a pretty sharp decline. I think this is somebody, though, that they just traded Jacob Trouba. I think it's kind of that Jacob Trouba light kind of mold. I don't think he should be playing a lot of minutes for you, but likely as a third pair penalty kill type of guy. He's been pretty bad this season, but if he's more like the 2023-24 type of player, then I think the Rangers get an effective D here. But that really is just the question. Is it just a change of scenery situation where you need to go somewhere else to start really getting that motivation and unlocking that potential again? Or is that decline a sign of things to come? If it is, that's really rough news for the Rangers, because at that point, I think they got robbed here. I think if I were to choose one direction, I still am a believer in Borgen being a solid third pair, reliable penalty killer if he needs to be. And in that type of situation, I think he can be fine. I think for the Rangers, they might need to be careful, though, of playing him too far in the lineup, because I think he's somebody that with too many minutes can get a little bit overwhelmed. I think in his third pair role, though, he can be solid. And I think for the Rangers, it is a worthy bet. Honestly, though, looking back, I think this is a solid trade for both teams. I think Seattle gets the most potential out of this deal. But if Will Borgen, who is another player like Kakko that has been struggling on his team this season, is able to turn it around, then I think for the Rangers, they needed to add some defense. That's what I've been really preaching over the last week or so, that they need to go after defensive adds, especially trading Jacob Trouba and not really getting any defensemen that are impact-worthy back. Borgen, I think, has the potential to do that. So I do like New York strengthening that defense, especially if there are more trades to come. But the fact that Kakko got traded for just this shows, I think, the lack of developments and treatment that Kakko got in New York. It's been a continual issue for the Rangers, especially when it comes to the European forwards and developing them throughout their system and actually giving them the time of day. And Kakko is just another in line with the Andersons and the Kratsovs that just have not worked. And that's a major problem to me, because those players are almost completely different between each other. So the Rangers couldn't make any of those play styles work. I think they need to take a big self-reflection at themselves to see what they're doing wrong, because it's just another in line of disappointments for New York that shouldn't be happening. As for the trade grades, I think I'm going to give Seattle a straight B. I think there's a lot of potential in this deal, and they really didn't give up too much for a player in Kakko, who I think even at his worst will be an effective player for them. And for the Rangers, I think it's fine. Casting aside the disappointment of Kakko's tenure and how they developed him, I think in terms of the actual trade package for Kakko, I think it's just okay. I'm going to give them a straight C. I don't think it's a failure or anything, but even at Borgen's best, he's just going to be a solid bottom pair D. Nothing all that crazy, and the picks aren't insane. It's a 3rd round pick, a 6th round pick. It could have been worse, but I think it also could have been a lot better. Now, we didn't just have one big trade ahead of the December roster freeze. We had 2, this time involving the Nashville Predators and the Montreal Canadiens, and this one was even more stunning. Kakko getting traded, sure, absolutely, that was something that we kind of expected to see happen. I'm glad it happened so soon, but in this case, this was a strange one. Now, in terms of the actual players being dealt, that wasn't really all too surprising. Alexandre Carrier is somebody that's been in trade rumors really over the last year or so, as Nashville looks to make so many changes to their team. In Carrier's case, he's somebody that has had a pretty bad year, just like practically every other Nashville Predator. But you can see in 28 games, he has 7 points, a -14. Some of that two-way game that we saw last season just wasn't quite there. But you can see what he's been able to do over the past few seasons when he is healthy. 30 points in 77 games back in 2022 and 20 points in 73 games last year. He's a really consistent two-way puck-moving defenseman who I think defensively puts up better results than you maybe expect from a 5'11", 175-pound D. I think in Carrier's case, he's one of those defensemen that is on the shorter side, but defensively is just so smart, so consistent. You know what you're getting out of him. He's not going to overwhelm you physically, but he's just in the right place at the right time, using his stick, being active defensively, and that's all you can really expect from a 5'11 defenseman. But in his case, I think defensively, there's some real value there when he is at his best. The problem is that just has not been the case so far with Nashville, but I'm willing to give him a pass because, again, of just how poor that Nashville team has been in general. In fact, it seems like every single defenseman on that team has had some rough moments throughout the year. Carrier is no exception. It makes sense for Nashville to get rid of him considering his high cap hit at a $3.7 million deal, somebody that just has not been working this season. They need to make some more changes on that defense, and they do so here. But he was somebody I was expecting to be as more of a trade deadline acquisition if we were to see him dealt, or maybe even the offseason because of his contract, having a couple more years left on it after this one. But the fact that we saw this in December, I think, was pretty surprising. Though, with how active Nashville has been, maybe not. You look at that Habs defense, and honestly, when it comes to the defensive pairings, I think Lane Hutson would be a really interesting pair there with Carrier, somebody that in Carrier's case can just provide smart defensive play. But I think considering his height, that's maybe something the Habs wouldn't pursue just because you would have two shorter defensemen on the pair together. I'm not sure if that's something they would do, but outside of that, you can maybe have him with Shaka, you can have him with Gulli. That could be interesting, a good solid shutdown pair there. There's options for the Habs, but he absolutely makes his way into that right side, and I think gives a lot more of an opportunity for the Habs to trade David Savard or even Mike Matheson if they really wanted to. It gives them a little bit more leeway there to trade a veteran defenseman because Carrier, in his case, has already got a lot of experience and can provide that type of role. It'll be really interesting to see how the Habs retool this defense, but I think Carrier is a smart addition, especially not just on the ice, but what he can do off of it as a Quebec-born. I think that's important, even if it shouldn't be to have a Quebec-born on Montreal. I think that is something that will boost his fan level appreciation, especially. He's something that will get absolutely adored in Montreal. And I think with the style of play he has, with the potential he has, I could absolutely see him being a solid second pair guy if he's able to get back to that 2022, 2024 type of level. Does that make the loss of Donovan Kovacevic and how well he's played this season a little bit better? I guess. I still think Kovacevic was somebody that was just a brutal loss of just how good he has been for New Jersey. But in this case, they needed another right D. They needed to shore that up a little bit. And in Carrier's case, I think he will be an effective guy there. Even if he isn't that second pair guy, I think he's still going to be an effective third pair guy who can provide a lot of stability there when he is at his best. But that will be the big thing. Will he get back to that level? That will be the big question. A lot of players who have been struggling big time traded recently. In Carrier's case, though, I think that change of scenery was really helpful. Now, that wasn't the only player dealt in this deal, because we also have, coming from the Montreal Canadiens, Justin Barron. And I was really shocked when I saw this was a 1-for-1 deal, especially considering how Justin Barron has played in his NHL career, to be just simply put. I thought there would be maybe a pick involved, maybe like a third or something, but the Montreal Canadiens are able to get an effective player in Carrier, or at least somebody that's proven to be effective for a guy that hasn't, I think, ever come close to bringing that type of consistency. In Justin Barron's case, sure, he's 23 years old, but I've seen a lot of people that don't really watch Barron floating that he's 6'2", 198 pounds. You wouldn't guess it if you watched him play. He is purely an offensive defenseman who at some points had a good shot in his career, but this year is just 1 goal in 17 games, 0 assists. Defensively has been unreliable, inconsistent, doesn't really use his body. Physicality wise, it's just pretty much non-existent for an offensive defenseman. I think for Nashville, there is something you can unlock there as maybe a second power play type of guy, but he's 23 years old, and even though that is still young for a defenseman, we just really haven't seen Barron progress at all in his NHL career. There have been good moments here and there, especially in the goal scoring department, but besides that, I don't really see much. I think if Barron ever develops, I think most likely he's just going to be a third pair power play type of defenseman, and you can have a place for that type of guy, but to me, I think that's just Nashville want to get a little bit younger on that defense again, and in Barron's case, he will get a big opportunity in Nashville, absolutely, and I hope he's able to seize it, but from what I've seen with Montreal, I think there's honestly just a 50-50 chance that Barron's even an NHLer in a few years, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So looking at this trade and seeing how both teams did, to me, the Habs get the much better player in Alexandre Carrier. That is reflected in his cap hit, of course, at $3.7 million, and that is something the Montreal Canadiens will have to manage. But if Carrier is at the solid level he can be, I think that cap hit is fair for him. In Justin Barron's case, I think he can be somebody for Nashville, but that development is really going to have to take a turn for him, because I mean there's a lot of room to grow there, and that's being nice to him. I think the Habs got the much better player in this deal. Again, I would have expected a pick or something going with Barron to Nashville. I'm pretty shocked to see this, in all honesty, especially considering the attention that Carrier was getting at last year's trade deadline before we saw any type of extension. He was somebody that the Preds were shopping and was a potential player to be dealt. And I just feel like the Preds maybe left a little bit of value on the table, not trading him then and trading him now. So in terms of the trade grades for this Habs and Preds deal, I'm going to give the Canadiens an A-. I think there is a little bit of maybe a cap issue with Carrier's extension there, $3.7 million. It's going to be a little bit to handle, but considering how much the Habs have coming off of the UFA block, I think they will have the cap space for it, but it will be something to keep attention on. And if Carrier isn't able to get back to that level, it could be a little bit of a cap anchor. But I think considering just giving up Justin Barron for him, I think that is a worthy deal to make. I like that risk for the Habs, and if it does work out, I think it makes their defense quite a bit more sturdy. For the Preds, I think Justin Barron is a fine defenseman potentially, but he needs some work to get there. Offensively, there is something there, but as of right now, I'm going to give them a straight D. I just really don't see the potential there. Sure, they're getting a little bit younger, but man, Justin Barron is your guy. I mean, it didn't work out for the Habs. We'll see if it works out for the Preds. Now, we also saw one more trade throughout the day, and this one was just really shocking to me because we saw the Pittsburgh Penguins reacquire defenseman Pierre-Olivier Joseph from the St. Louis Blues for future considerations. This one was just strange in so many ways. I don't know why Pittsburgh really wants Pierre-Olivier Joseph back. I mean, he had some good moments for them, but for future considerations, this one was kind of interesting. It looks like St. Louis really wanted to get rid of him. Now, in terms of the player that Pierre-Olivier Joseph is, I think he's fine as a bottom pair D, a sixth guy maybe. He's something that defensively I thought struggled a little bit with Pittsburgh, but got maybe slightly better with St. Louis, nothing by too much. But the offense hasn't really provided much of a leeway, at least with his time in St. Louis. Just 2 assists, 0 goals in 23 games. So it's not a surprise that he got dealt, but man, does it just suck. Because as Chris Johnston shares, Matthew Joseph shares on IG that he's having a final meal with brother Pierre-Olivier following P.O.'s trade to Pittsburgh. They were teammates in St. Louis for 3 months this season before his Knights deal. And the reason that obviously Pierre-Olivier Joseph signed there was so he could play with his brother in St. Louis. So it looks a little bit sad there, man. When they're having their last dinner, they get the trade call. Pierre-Olivier is off to Pittsburgh and they just have to deal with that and eat the rest of their dinner. Man, how could we do this to them? How could we as a society do this to these two brothers, man? They signed to play together too. This just sucks. I mean, in Pierre-Olivier's case, he probably should have played a little bit better to make sure he could stay on the team, but I digress. It is interesting, though, with the Penguins and Marcus Pettersson being injured here. It seems like they're acquiring a defenseman maybe to shore up that in case that injury is a little bit worse than maybe expected. So that could be an element of this deal that, you know, you get somebody who's been in your organization already, you know what you're getting out of them, so you can plug them into that type of spot. We'll see what ends up happening, but the Penguins are making moves as they've been a little bit better the last month. I will give them credit for that. We'll see if Pierre-Olivier Joseph can help for that. I guess this is a solid deal for the Penguins, but man, for the Blues, you broke up your own brother duo on your own team for what? Future considerations? You had the brother power and you got rid of it. How dare you? But those are my thoughts on the trades over the last day or so, and I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know your thoughts on the Kakko deal, the Carrier deal, even the Pierre-Olivier Joseph deal, if you have any thoughts on that. And of course, share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online to get the trades out to them. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell, and make sure you use code YouTube150 and sign up to BetUS today as well. And if you want more content, by the way, we have a trade rumor playlist out there, so you can binge watch anything you want, all the trades over the last few years, right there in one playlist for y'all. And of course, I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure you guys drink some water and have a great hockey day. Goodbye.